Early morning sunlight slipped through the wide windows of City General Hospital, painting the corridors with a faint golden glow. Nurses rushed back and forth, carrying charts and medicines, their shoes tapping lightly on the polished floors. Doctors checked in with their teams, discussing cases and reviewing patient notes. Among them was Dr. Aisha Rahman, a young but highly respected physician known for her calm voice, clear mind, and warm heart. She had always believed that every patient, whether rich or poor, deserved not just treatment but respect and kindness. That morning, she had a difficult name on her list, Mr. Raymond Hale, a millionaire businessman in his late 60s. For decades, he had built towers, shopping centers, and hotels across the city. To the outside world, he was powerful and successful, but now, inside the hospital walls, he was simply a man with a weak body, sitting silently in his bed. His illness had reached a stage where treatment was important, but he had refused every single option. His chart was full of red marks: declined chemotherapy, declined surgery, declined intensive care. As Dr. Aisha walked into his VIP room, she noticed the difference. Unlike other rooms buzzing with activity, his space was strangely quiet. The blinds were half closed, and only the faint sound of city traffic leaked in from outside. On the small table beside him, there was nothing but a glass of water, a folded newspaper, and one old photograph. Mr. Hale looked up slowly when she entered. His sharp features carried both strength and tiredness. "You're new," he said in a low voice. "I'm Dr. Aisha. I'll be checking in on you today," she replied gently, offering him a small smile. "I hope you don't plan on convincing me to sign anything," he muttered, already reaching for the pen to cross out yet another form. Aisha didn't push. She had learned early in her career that listening sometimes did more than talking. Instead, her eyes drifted to the photograph on his table. It was a picture of a small wooden bridge over a quiet river. In the corner, someone had written a note, "For Mara." "That's a beautiful place," Aisha said softly, pointing toward the picture. "Is it somewhere you've been?" For a brief moment, his expression softened. "Yes. Long ago." Then, as if catching himself, he turned his face away. "Don't bother asking more. It doesn't matter now." Aisha nodded, respecting his silence. She checked his vitals carefully, writing them down without rushing. She knew the staff often whispered about him. "He's impossible. He won't listen. He thinks money makes him smarter than doctors." But as she stood there, she didn't see arrogance. She saw loneliness. The hospital administrator, Mr. Dwyer, had warned her earlier, "Keep it quick. He's a VIP but doesn't want intervention. Just get the signatures and move on." Aisha, however, had never believed in treating patients like paperwork. She pulled up a chair and sat near his bed. "Mr. Hale," she said kindly, "I'm not here to force you. But may I ask, why do you not want treatment? Is it the fear of pain? Or something else?" He stared at her for a long time, his eyes unreadable. Then he gave a faint, bitter smile. "Doctor, have you ever kept a promise you hated?" The question hung in the air. Aisha tilted her head slightly, surprised by his words. She wanted to ask more, but before she could, a knock came at the door. Nurse Elena entered with fresh supplies, breaking the moment. "Mr. Hale," Elena said politely, "would you like me to bring breakfast?" "No," he replied shortly, waving her off. After Elena left, silence filled the room again. Aisha packed up her chart slowly, giving him space to speak if he wished. But he only looked out toward the half-closed blinds, the city skyline barely visible through the gap. "Very well," Aisha said softly as she stood up. "I'll check in again later. But if you ever want to talk not about medicine, just talk, I'll be around." As she reached the door, she heard his voice again, softer this time, almost as though he was speaking to himself. "Doctor, have you ever kept a promise you hated?" Aisha paused at the doorway. She turned back slightly, but his eyes were fixed on the photograph. It was clear the question wasn't really for her, it was for himself, for someone long gone, or perhaps for Mara. She walked out quietly, her mind heavy with questions. Why would a man with all the resources in the world choose to refuse care? What promise was he talking about? And who was Mara? The hospital hall outside was noisy again with ringing phones and hurried footsteps, but Dr. Aisha carried the weight of his words with her. She knew this was not an ordinary case. Something deeper was hidden beneath his stubbornness, something that had little to do with medicine and everything to do with the heart. And she felt, deep inside, that this story between a dying millionaire and a young doctor was only just beginning. The next day at City General Hospital, the weather outside had turned heavy and gray. Clouds hung low, and the sound of distant thunder rolled through the city. Inside the VIP wing, the halls were quieter than usual, as though the storm itself was pressing on the building. Dr. Aisha carried her patient file, her steps steady but her mind filled with thoughts of Raymond Hale's strange words the day before, "Have you ever kept a promise you hated?" When she entered his room, she noticed something immediately. Mr. Hale's breathing seemed more labored. His chest rose and fell quickly, and he clutched the blanket with trembling hands. His skin looked pale, and a thin line of sweat glistened on his forehead. "Mr. Hale," Aisha said softly, approaching the bed, "you're struggling to breathe. Let me put on an oxygen mask for you." He shook his head firmly. "No mask. No machines." "Then at least let me open the window," she said gently. He gave the smallest nod. Aisha pulled the blinds wide and unlocked the window. Cool, damp air drifted into the room, carrying the scent of rain. He inhaled slowly, relief flickering across his face. "You need relief," she insisted quietly. "There are safe ways to help you breathe without forcing you onto machines." His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in weariness. "Doctor, everyone who has walked into this room has spoken about what I should do. You're the first who asked what I want." Aisha sat down beside him, folding her hands in her lap. "Then tell me. What matters most to you today?" For a long while, he stared at the storm outside. Finally, he said, "To feel like myself. Not like a project for your hospital." Her chest tightened with compassion. She could hear the bitterness in his tone, but she also heard the pain beneath it. Before she could answer, there was a sharp knock on the door. Mr. Dwyer, the hospital administrator, stepped inside. "Dr. Rahman," he said briskly, ignoring Mr. Hale, "we need his signature for the refusal forms. Legal requires it. He's made his choice. Don't waste time." Aisha looked at Mr. Hale, then back at the administrator. "He's not ready to sign right now. He's been refusing for weeks," Dwyer snapped. "Our job is to protect the hospital, not to babysit stubborn patients." Aisha felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her tone calm. "Our job is also to protect his dignity." Mr. Hale gave a small, almost invisible smile at her words. Dwyer frowned, muttered something about wasted resources, and stormed out. When the room grew quiet again, Mr. Hale's hand moved slowly toward the table. He picked up a sealed envelope, its edges worn and its paper slightly yellowed with time. He held it out to Aisha. "Take this," he whispered. She hesitated. "What is it?" "If I don't make it through the storm inside me," he said, his voice raspy, "find Mara. She'll know what to do." The name on the photograph. Aisha carefully took the envelope, feeling the weight of his trust. "Is Mara your daughter?" she asked softly. He looked away, his jaw clenched. "Once. But that was a lifetime ago." Something about the way he said it told Aisha this wasn't just about medicine, it was about broken ties, unfinished promises, and regrets that weighed heavier than illness. Later that afternoon, during her break, Aisha sat in the small doctor's lounge, sipping lukewarm tea and staring at the envelope. Curiosity tugged at her heart, but respect held her back. She would not open it unless it became necessary. Instead, she pulled up his medical file again. As her eyes moved across the pages, she frowned. Something was wrong. Buried deep in the records was a note about a severe allergy to a common drug. Strangely, it wasn't highlighted in red like it should have been. She thought of how easily a rushed doctor could have ordered that very medication, endangering his life. Her pulse quickened. Is this why he doesn't trust hospitals? Did someone miss this before? She remembered his words, a promise you hated. Perhaps that promise was tied to something more painful than she could yet imagine. At that moment, her pager buzzed loudly on her belt. Code alert, hail, oxygen drop. Her heart pounded. She rushed down the hall, the storm outside rattling the windows as lightning flashed. She burst into his room where the monitor showed falling numbers. His chest heaved, his lips pale. He whispered, barely audible, I can't catch my breath. And as Dr. Aisha leaned over to steady him, she realized the time for small steps was over. The storm inside and outside had truly begun. The storm had passed in the night, leaving the city damp and shining under the morning sun. Inside the hospital, however, the storm around Mr. Hale's health and choices was only getting stronger. Dr. Aisha walked quickly down the corridor, her mind replaying the scene from the night before, his lips pale, his chest heaving, his whisper, I can't catch my breath. She knew if she hadn't acted quickly to stabilize him with the most basic support, things might have gone differently. But the larger question still remained, how could she help a man who refused the very idea of treatment? She stood outside his room for a moment, breathing deeply, before stepping in. Mr. Hale was awake, propped up against his pillows, looking more tired than ever but also calmer. The photograph of the bridge still sat on the table beside him. Good morning, she said softly. Morning, doctor, he replied in a voice barely above a whisper. His eyes searched her face. You stayed last night, didn't you? She nodded. I did. I wanted to make sure you were safe. For the first time, he gave a small, genuine smile. Most people would have signed their papers and gone home. Aisha pulled up a chair. Mr. Hale, I reviewed your file again last night. I found something that worried me. She paused before continuing, not wanting to overwhelm him. You have a dangerous drug allergy that isn't highlighted. If someone ordered it without noticing, it could have harmed you. Did something like that happen before? His jaw tightened, and his eyes shifted to the window. Years ago. My brother. He stopped, swallowing hard. He was younger than me, healthy, full of life. He went in for something simple. They gave him the wrong drug. He never walked out. Aisha's heart ached. Suddenly, his anger toward hospitals, his refusal, all of it made sense. I'm so sorry, she whispered. He looked back at her. That day, I promised myself I'd never let these walls decide my life. And I kept that promise. Even if it's killing me. She leaned forward gently. Sometimes promises made in pain can steal more from us than we expect. What if there's a way to honor your wishes without breaking that promise? What if we focus on comfort, not machines? He frowned. Comfort. Yes, she explained carefully. There's an option where we treat only to ease your breath, to give you energy to do what matters to you, without forcing harsh procedures. For example, we can drain some of the fluid around your lungs. It's simple and safe. You'll breathe easier without being tied to machines. He studied her face, searching for a trick. And when the machines roll in? They won't, she said firmly. Not unless you ask for them. I will put that in writing myself. He stayed quiet, but his fingers drummed lightly on the blanket. She could sense he was thinking. Later that day, Aisha sat in her office, holding the sealed envelope again. She wanted to respect his privacy, but she also knew Mara might be the key to helping him truly heal, even if not physically. She asked the hospital's social worker, Luis, for help. Mara. Luis repeated as he typed into his database. Looks like she changed her last name a few years ago. She lives just outside the city. There's an address. Can you reach out? Aisha asked. I can try, Luis said, though he looked uncertain. But if she left, there may be a reason. Before she could say more, a message flashed across her screen, meeting request from administration urgent. The next morning, she walked into the administrator's office. Mr. Dwyer was waiting, arms folded. Dr. Rahman, what exactly are you doing with Mr. Hale? I heard you suggested procedures. He already refused treatment. Why are you wasting resources? I didn't suggest aggressive treatment, Aisha answered calmly. I suggested comfort first care. He deserves to breathe without suffering. Dwyer shook his head. That man has money, reputation, and power. The hospital doesn't want a scandal if he claims we forced him into something. Back off, or you'll answer to the board. Her heart sank, but she stood tall. Then let me answer. Because what I'm offering is respect, not force. As she left the office, her pager buzzed again. Emergency, Hale. Oxygen drop. She raced back to his room. His lips trembled as he whispered, Doctor. I can't, his eyes locked on hers, filled with fear for the first time. She held his hand firmly. I promised, remember. No machines you don't want. But let me help you breathe. Trust me once. And in that moment, she knew the choice ahead would test not only her skill as a doctor but also her courage as a human being. The hospital wing was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the distant roll of carts in the hallway. The storm had left the sky clear, but inside Mr. Hale's room, the air was tense. His breathing was shallow, every inhale sounding like an uphill climb. Dr. Aisha stood by his bedside, her eyes steady but her heart racing. She knew she had reached a turning point. Either she would act boldly now, or she would watch him continue to suffer under the weight of his own mistrust. Mr. Hale, she said gently, your lungs are filled with fluid. That's why you can't breathe well. I'm not talking about putting you on machines. I'm talking about a small bedside procedure. I'll drain the fluid, and you'll be able to breathe easier. Nothing more. He closed his eyes, fighting for air. No ICU. No machines, he repeated, clinging to his promise. No ICU. No machines, she assured him. Just relief. Only what you allow. For a moment, silence filled the room. His hand trembled on the blanket. Finally, with a weak nod, he whispered, do it. Aisha quickly called her team. Nurse May rolled in the tray with sterile equipment. Dr. Omar, the resident, looked nervous but determined. The room became a quiet stage of preparation. Aisha explained each step in calm, simple words, making sure Mr. Hale knew exactly what would happen. This is called a thoracentesis, she told him. A thin needle will go into your side, and will drain the fluid. You'll feel pressure, maybe some discomfort, but then relief. His eyes never left hers. I'm trusting you once, doctor. With careful hands, she guided the needle, May standing close with sterile gauze. Clear fluid began to fill the collection bottle. Within minutes, Mr. Hale's chest rose more smoothly, and his face relaxed. He took a deeper breath, one that seemed to carry a weight off his shoulders. I can breathe, he whispered, almost in disbelief. Yes, Aisha smiled warmly. You can. But outside the room, not everyone was smiling. News of the procedure reached Mr. Dwyer, the administrator, who stormed down the hall with a file in hand. "Dr. Rahman," he barked when she stepped into the hallway, "what do you think you're doing? That man signed refusals. You've overstepped." "I had his consent," she replied calmly. "He agreed. It was about comfort, not forcing treatment." "You're on thin ice," Dwyer snapped. "The board will hear about this." Aisha felt her stomach tighten, but she stood her ground. "Then let them hear. I'd rather face the board than watch a man drown in his own lungs when a safe option existed." That night, after the chaos, Mr. Hale asked for something unexpected. "Can I see the sky?" The hospital's rooftop garden was closed at night, but Aisha believed healing wasn't only about medicine. She called in a favor from Yusuf, the security guard, who respected her dedication. Together, they wheeled Mr. Hale to the top floor. When the doors opened, the cool evening air rushed in. The city stretched out, glowing with 1,000 lights. Stars peeked between the high towers. Mr. Hale closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. "For the first time in months," he said softly, "I don't feel trapped." Aisha stood beside him, quietly grateful. In that moment, he wasn't a millionaire or a stubborn patient. He was simply a man rediscovering a piece of peace. After a long silence, he spoke again. "Doctor, send that letter to Mara. I think I'm ready." Her heart stirred. The name carried weight, sorrow, and hope. She nodded. "I'll make sure she gets it." But as they wheeled him back into his room, her pager buzzed again. A notice flashed across the screen: "Mandatory board review of Dr. Rahman tomorrow 8 a.m. She looked at the message, then at Mr. Hale resting peacefully, finally breathing with ease. She knew the price of her decision was about to arrive. The question was, would the board see the truth of her actions, or would they see only a line crossed? The boardroom at City General Hospital was filled with the quiet shuffle of papers and the low hum of whispered conversations. Early morning sunlight filtered through tall windows, catching dust motes in the air. Dr. Aisha sat at one end of the long polished table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She knew this meeting would decide her future at the hospital. Across from her sat Mr. Dwyer, the administrator, his face set in stone. Beside him were senior doctors, nurses, and members of the ethics committee. A large screen stood at the far end, ready for presentations. The atmosphere was heavy with expectation. "Dr. Rahman," the chair began formally, "we're here to review your conduct in the care of Mr. Raymond Hale. Reports say you performed a procedure against standard directives. Do you confirm this?" Aisha lifted her chin, her voice calm but firm. "Yes, I did. But I did so with Mr. Hale's clear consent. He was suffering. He deserved relief, not abandonment." Mr. Dwyer leaned forward. "You ignored hospital policy. That patient refused treatment. You acted recklessly." Before Aisha could reply, the screen flickered to life. A video message played, recorded just hours earlier. Mr. Hale, seated upright in his bed, his breathing stronger than it had been in weeks, looked directly at the camera. "I asked her to help me," he said in a raspy but steady voice. "I refused machines. I refused to be treated like an object. But Dr. Rahman listened. She explained, she respected me, and she gave me back something simple: my breath. She treated me like a man, not a case file. If you question her, you question my choice." The room fell silent. Some members exchanged glances, moved by his words. Aisha took a deep breath. This isn't about breaking rules. It's about honoring values. He didn't want to die tied to machines, but he also didn't want to suffocate. He wanted dignity. That's what I gave him. There was a pause before the chair finally spoke. "Thank you, doctor. The board will deliberate." When the meeting ended, Aisha walked out, her heart pounding. In the corridor, she saw Luis, the social worker, waiting with news. "We reached Mara," he said gently. "She's coming." Later that afternoon, the door to Mr. Hale's room opened, and a woman in her 30s stepped in. Her hair was tied back, her expression guarded, but her eyes shone with unshed tears. "Mara," Mr. Hale whispered, his voice trembling. For a moment, she stood frozen, years of distance between them. Then she moved closer. "I didn't know if I should come," she admitted. "I wasn't the father you needed," he said, his voice breaking. "But I never stopped being proud of you." Her eyes filled. "You drove me away, Dad. All I wanted was your approval." He reached out a weak hand, and she took it. The years of silence cracked open, replaced by quiet sobs and the healing words neither thought they'd speak again. Aisha stood silently in the corner, her chest tight with emotion. In the days that followed, a change filled Mr. Hale's room. No longer a place of isolation, it became a place of connection. Mara visited daily, bringing him small comforts: homemade soup, books, stories of her life. Mr. Hale, though weaker, seemed lighter. His laughter, rare before, was heard again. One morning, he called for Aisha. "Doctor, I've made arrangements. I want to fund a program here. Call it Patient Voice. Every patient deserves to be heard, not just treated. You'll lead it?" Her eyes widened. "Mr. Hale, it's my thank you," he interrupted with a faint smile. "You saved more than my breath. You gave me back my daughter. Let this program remind others that healing isn't just about medicine." Aisha nodded, tears blurring her vision. Weeks passed. Mr. Hale's condition slowly declined, but he never returned to the lonely man who refused everything. He chose where and how he wanted to spend his final days: at home, with Mara by his side. Aisha visited once, finding him sitting by a window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the same kind of sunset he had seen from the rooftop garden. "I'm ready," he told her quietly. "Thank you, doctor." Not long after, he passed peacefully, just as he wished, without machines, surrounded by love. At the hospital, the board withdrew its reprimand. Instead, they celebrated the start of the new Patient Voice program. A photograph of the wooden bridge, the one marked for Mara, was placed on the wall in the unit, a reminder of his story. Aisha continued her work, teaching new interns the lesson she had learned through him: start with listening. Sometimes, the most powerful treatment begins with respect. And whenever she walked past that photo, she remembered the millionaire who had once refused all treatment but allowed her to give him something greater than medicine: trust, peace, and one last chance at love.